And this is a story about a time that Thor went fishing. Now, some of you might have heard this one before, but it's one of my favourites because Thor just gets angry and stroppy and hits things with his hammer. A bit like me, some would say. Now, Thor lived in Asgard and he got quite bored. He was one of the most famous gods as well, so everywhere he went, everybody knew who he was. He was a bit like a Viking celebrity. So he decided to go out and have an adventure in the skies. So he used magic. I told you there's a lot of magic in these stories. And he turned into a sort of teenage boy and he set off on an adventure. And as he often did, he ended up in Jotunheim, the land of the giants. And he got hungry. A lot of similarities to this last story. He got very hungry, so he decided to go to the first door that he found in Jotunheim and knock on the door. The door opened, and a giant looked out and couldn't see a thing. Then he heard this tiny voice below and he looked down and he saw this little human. Shocked, he didn't know what to think, but before he had time to speak, Thor walked into the house and made himself comfortable by the fire. "Food!" he shouted. And the giant thought, okay, I better feed him. Now, in Viking times, hospitality was very important. So let me put it in terms that you might understand, boys and girls. Viking hospitality meant if someone came to your house, even if you didn't like them, you'd have to feed them. It would be a bit like your brother or sister knocking on your room door and you had to let them in and give them sweets. So in walks Thor, sits by the fire, and the giant begins to feed him. Now, the giant's name's Hymir, and he's quite bad-tempered too, so this story's not going to go very well. So Hymir brought out meat, and Loki ate it all. And he brought out cheese, and he ate it all. And he brought out bread, and Thor ate it all. Then he brought out ale, and guess what? Yep, he drank it all until there was nothing left. Now, Hymir was furious by this point. He hadn't managed to eat and he was hungry. And he said, well, brilliant. Now we're going to have to get up in the morning and go fishing so that we have some food. So why don't you go to sleep and we'll get up early and we'll go fishing. So Thor made himself comfortable with a nice full belly and went to sleep by the fire. Now, next time, it was morning. So Thor woke up, quite hungry. Can't wait to go fishing. I love fishing, said Thor. And out the house he went. Hymir was getting the boat ready and turned to Thor and said, quite grumpily, well, Thor, we don't have anything for bait because you ate it all. You're going to have to go and find something. So Thor went, okay, and off he went. And he found a herd of giant cows. He went up to the biggest cow he could find. He put one hand on one horn, one hand on the other, and with a big twist, he wrenched the head off, put it over his shoulder, and he travelled back to the boat. Now, Hymir at this point was just staring in disbelief at this tiny little human carrying a giant cow head on his shoulder. But again, before he could say anything, Thor had jumped into the boat, and off they went. Now, they rowed, and they rowed, and they rowed for a while, until they couldn't see any land, and Hymir said, this spot is perfect. We're going to fish here. But Thor said, nope, we're going further. And he took the oars and he rowed and he rowed and he rowed. And Ymir started to panic. He said, I don't want to go out any further. It gets a bit scary out here. But Thor kept rowing and he rowed and he rowed. And then Ymir said, please stop. You're going to take us so far that we'll reach the end of the world and we'll fall off. But Thor kept rowing until the edge of the world was in sight. And then he said, here, this is where we're going to fish. So Hymir nervously cast his line and started to fish. And Thor picked up his cow head and went, oh, I don't have a fishing rod. So he looked round to see what he could use as a fishing rod, and he saw the anchor. The anchor jammed the cow's head on it, and he threw it into the ocean and stood there waiting to see what he could catch. Now, what I haven't told you is that deep down in the ocean there is a creature that is terrifying. He is known as the Midgard serpent. Now, he has glowing, terrifying eyes, and gigantic huge teeth. Now he is so long that he goes round the world and all the way back, and he bites his own tail. The second that the bait sank into the water, Jormungandr smelt it and he set off in pursuit. Now, Thor's standing there really excited waiting, and he felt a huge tug. Oh, oh. So he started to pull, and he pulled, and he pulled, but then it tugged back. And he pulled, and he pulled, and it became a vicious, vicious tug of war. Now, boys and girls, I don't know who you want to win. Do you want Jormungandr to win? Do you want Thor to win? And Thor pulled and pulled, but for every 2 pulls, it was 1 pull back, so it took ages. This was a battle. Now, eventually, he started to see the eyes just below the surface of the water, and with one last pull, he yanked Jormungandr, and Jormungandr towered over the boat with his glowing red eyes and his vicious teeth. Thor was over the moon. Jormungandr was his favourite enemy, and he was desperate to kill him and bring home the body to Asgard. Now, we forgot there's someone else in the boat, isn't there? Ymir the giant. Now, Ymir was in the corner of the boat. He was terrified. We're all gonna die. So he grabbed his knife and he grabbed the rope that was holding on the anchor, and he sawed and he sawed and he sawed. Meanwhile, Thor's reaching behind him to get his mighty hammer and kill Jormungandr. He raised the hammer to bash Jormungandr in the head, but the line snapped and Jormungandr splashed back into the ocean, down into the depths. Now, we all know Thor does not have a good temper. He was furious. But this time, he didn't use his hammer. He kicked Ymir so hard, he flew all the way back to land, and he created a valley in the land with his landing that was so deep, it's there to this day. So Thor had had enough now. He wanted to go home. So he changed back into a giant, and this meant his feet crashed through the bottom of the boat, and his feet landed on the ocean bottom. So he was wearing the boat a bit like a skirt. He stomped home in a bad mood all the way to Asgard, and he told the other gods what had happened, but they didn't believe him. They just saw it as someone who kept talking about the one that got away. Now that is the story of when Thor went fishing.